Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bharatiya Darshanik Manch. In last class, we have studied Jaina Metaphysics, part 1, and in this class, we will study Jain Metaphysics, part 2. And for all those who are inquiring about whether this class uh, will be happen in Hindi or not, so this class is already available on our YouTube channel in Hindi. Sir has taught it, so please find it there. Now starting with the remaining part of Jain metaphysics. So, talking about Charvaka skepticism. So, as we know that Charvaka believes that uh, the Chaitanya Vishishta Deha Eva Atma, the body with the quality of consciousness is the Atma. So he relates, Charvakas relate the conscious body with the Atma. Now Gunratna, who is a Jain thinker, gives elaborate arguments to meet Charvaka skepticism and prove the existence of the soul. Proofs. Now let's talk about the proofs of the existence of soul. The existence of soul is directly proved. Now we will talk about the direct proof and indirect proofs as well. Directly proved by such uncontradicted immediate experience as I feel pleasure. So when I say that I feel pleasure or I feel pain, there is somebody that is feeling or something that is feeling, and this I also identify something. This I identifies the soul. Now when we perceive the quality of a substance, we say we perceive the substance. This is Jaina's view. For example, now Jainas are giving an example that when we see a rosy color, we hold that we perceive the substance rose. So the rosy color is equivalent to the substance rose. In similar grounds, we can hold that soul is directly perceived because we immediately perceive such characters of the soul as pleasure, pain, remembrance, volition, doubt, knowledge, etc. So these are the characters of a soul. The feeling of pleasure, feeling of pain, feeling or remembering something. These are the characters of a soul. So when we perceive the characters of soul, we perceive the soul as well. Now, talking about the indirect proofs for the existence of soul, we can say that the existence of soul may be proved by inferences like the following. So, first inference is the body can be moved and controlled at will like a car. As a car is controlled by somebody, similarly, the body is also controlled. Therefore, there must be someone that moves and controls it. When taking the example of car, there is a person who controls the car, who moves the car. So, in the similar way, there must be somebody, something, or some power that moves and controls the body. Now the senses of sight, hearing, etc. are only instruments, and there must be some agent who employs them. Now we know that we can see, we can hear, but uh, it is not the case that we are seeing everything that is in front of us, or we are hearing every sound that comes to our ear. What happens is that we direct our sense of sight to a particular thing, and then we see the thing, and we direct our ears to a particular sound, then we hear that sound. So in that way, these senses are just instruments, and we need some agent who employs them, who controls them, right? Again, there must be some efficient cause or producer of the body, as we have earlier talked about in the example of an earthen jar, we talked about that clay is a material cause and the potter is the efficient cause. And with the help of the wheel, the potter produces an earthen jar. And in that example, the clay, being the material cause, needed the help of a potter, which was efficient cause. So in the similar way, we need an efficient cause for the body. Or we can say that we need a producer of the body, because material objects which have a beginning are found to require some agent for shaping their material cause. Similarly, as we talked about in the example of an earthen jar. Thus, in different ways, the existence of a substance like the soul can also be inferred. So, in these were the inferences with help of which we can infer that yes, there is some efficient cause, there is some something that can be called a soul, which must be there, which moves the body, which controls the body. Now, Charvaka holds that consciousness is the product of the material elements, but we never perceive anywhere the generation of consciousness by the unconscious material elements. So, you might remember that when we were talking about the consciousness in Charvaka metaphysics, we said that the consciousness is understood by Charvaka as the byproduct of the matter, or the epiphenomena of the matter, or the byproduct of the combination of four elements, those four elements except the ether that Charvaka believes. But here Jainas are arguing, they are saying that okay, we accept Charvaka's view, we accept that there are elements, four elements, and they combine, and then the consciousness is produced. That consciousness is the byproduct of the matter, but we never perceive this production of consciousness. We never perceive when these elements are combining, at what point the consciousness is produced and how this consciousness is being produced. We never perceive this. So Charvaka here believes that perception is the only valid source of knowledge. So as we know that Charvaka believes that perception is the only source of knowledge, but still they are saying that consciousness is byproduct of matter, and they are not uh, basing their belief of existence of consciousness on perception. It is a belief on the basis of inference, because they cannot see the consciousness, they cannot perceive the consciousness, so their argument is faulty. Now, even if inference were accepted as valid by Charvakas, it would not prove that consciousness is the effect of matter or the material body. Now, Jainas say, let's suppose that Charvakas are accepting inference, and they are accepting inference with the acceptance of perception as well, but still they cannot prove that consciousness is the effect of matter, because the reason now is given is that if the body were the cause of consciousness, there would be no absence of consciousness so long as the body existed. Now, why they are saying this? As Charvakas believe that consciousness is the byproduct of matter, and consciousness stays as long as the body stays. It lives as long as the body lives, and consciousness vanishes when the body vanishes. So what happens that if we accept Charvaka's view, then there would be no absence of consciousness so long as the body existed. As long as the body is existing, suppose a person lives for 40 years or 50 years, so there should not be any point in his lifetime that there is absence of consciousness. The consciousness should be present all the time. But what happens? That in sleep there is no consciousness, in swoon there is no consciousness, or in a dead body there is no consciousness. So now we can see that Charvaka's belief is faulty, because Charvakas believe that as long as body existed, a dead body is still a body, right? So even in dead body or in sleep there is no presence of consciousness, and as consciousness is not present in these uh, places, we can say that consciousness cannot be proved by inference as well. So besides, we find that there is no relation of concomitant variation between the body and the consciousness. Now what Jaina said, they said that we do not find any relation of concomitant variation between the body and consciousness. We cannot say that there is body and there is consciousness and both of them will be fine together all the time. We cannot say this. So now this means that the development and decay of the body are not invariably followed by corresponding changes of consciousness. We cannot say that, okay, uh, the consciousness uh, grows as a person grows. So if there is a child, the consciousness of a child is also little, as the child is little, and when the child grows, the child becomes an adult, or the child becomes an old man. We cannot say that consciousness also becomes adult and consciousness also become an old person, old consciousness. We cannot say this. Okay, so no causal connection between matter and consciousness can be proved even by inference. So we cannot prove the consciousness from the viewpoint of Charvaka. Like, as Charvakas accepted perception only, we cannot prove consciousness according to their view. The Charvaka would perhaps say, though every kind of matter does not produce consciousness, yet when matter is organized into a living body, it produces consciousness. So this argument can be given by Charvaka, that every kind of matter does not produce consciousness. But when matter is organized into a living being, it produces consciousness. In reply to this, what Jaina say, they point out that for some organizer, matter would not be formed into a living body, and that this organizer is a soul itself. Uh, Even if we suppose that when matter is organized into a living body, it produces consciousness, there might be some chances when matter is organized, but the living body is not formed. Right? So judgments like I am stout, I am thin, on which the Chavaka tries to prove that the soul is identical with the body, must be understood figuratively and not literally. So uh, after all this understanding, we can say, or Jaina say, that judgments like I am stout, I am fat, I am thin, on which Chavaka tries to prove that soul is identical with body, must be understood figuratively. It should not be understood literally. Right? Figuratively means, like, uh, we cannot take it as by literal words. The soul sometimes treats the body as itself because it is intimately interested in the body. Now Jainas are saying that soul sometimes treats the body as itself because it is interested in the body. Again, if the soul were absolutely unreal, the negative judgment, there is no soul in the body, would be unintelligible. Right? You cannot say that there is no soul in the body unless it exists somewhere. Denial of something needs its existence in somewhere, some other place. So you cannot deny that uh, that in this room there is no elephant unless you accept the existence of elephant in somewhere, in some other place, like that an animal exists which is called elephant, and it does exist somewhere, not here in this room, but yes, somewhere apart from this room. Now denial of something in any place implies the knowledge of its existing somewhere in some form. Apart from all other arguments, to say that myself does not exist is as absurd as to say my mother is barren, the sun does not exist. So now Jainas are saying, they're saying that if we take this example that myself does not exist, if a person say this, myself does not exist, then what he is doing, the person is contradicting his existence itself, because the person exists, and that is the reason why the person can talk about himself. If he did not exist, he could not talk about himself. And it is as absurd as to say that my mother is barren. If your mother was barren, then you would not be born, right? Now, the inanimate substances or Ajiva. Now let's talk about the Ajivas. The physical world in which souls live is constituted by the material bodies that the souls occupy and the other material objects that form their environment. We have already talked about it, that souls live somewhere, and where they live is this world, and in this world is constituted by material bodies, right? Some bodies are like animals, insects, bees, ants, etc., and human bodies also included. So these material bodies are something that are occupied by souls, and the other, and then apart from these material bodies which soul occupy, there are some material objects um, like mountains, river, etc. These are the material objects that form their environment. But in addition to these material substances, there are space, time, and the conditions of motion and rest. So when we are considering about the reality or about the world, we see that there are material bodies, there are material objects, and after material bodies and material objects, we also have space in which the material objects are existing. We also have time, according to which we can understand the because of which we can understand the duration, the past, present, and future. The time exists in this way, and we have also conditions of motion and rest. So without these things, the world and the events cannot be fully explained. We cannot explain about the material objects or the material body if we do not consider the space and time, motion and rest into consideration. Now, the first thing that we have to talk is this matter or Pudgal. Matter is called Pudgal in Jaina philosophy. Etymologically, Pudgal means that which is liable to integration and disintegration. So we know that matter can integrate and it can also disintegrate. Material substances can combine together to form large and larger wholes and can also break up into smaller and smaller parts. So these material substances can combine and make large wholes like mountains and can make small parts like dust. So these are the material substance and their work. Now the smallest part of matter which cannot be further divided being partless are called atoms or anu. So as we have also seen in basic science that atoms cannot be further divided. Of course, we know that there are electrons, protons, and neutrons. So Jainas are writing and they are saying that atoms or anu, they are partless, they cannot be further divided, and two or more such atoms may combine together to form compounds, which is also known as sanghat or skandha. So partless atoms, they come together and they form a skandha. Our bodies and the objects of nature are such compounds of material atoms. So our bodies, that is material body, or the mountains, the plants, everything, these are the material objects. All of them are compounds of atoms. Okay. Now, mind, speech, and breath are also the products of matter. Mind, the manas, speech, and breath. are also the products of matter. A material substance, that is Pudgal, possesses the four qualities of touch, taste, smell and color. So these are the four qualities a material substance possesses. These qualities are possessed by atoms and also by their products. So when we know that an atom possesses these four qualities, we can say for sure that if we combine those atoms, the combination of those atoms will also have the similar qualities, right? Now, sound is not an original quality like these four, as most other Indian philosophers hold. So, other Indian philosophers hold that sound is an original quality, but Jainas reject it. The Jainas point out that sound, along with light, heat, shadow, darkness, union, disunion, fineness, grossness, shape, is produced later by the accidental modifications of matter. So when the matter is accidentally modified, then sound, light, heat, shadow are produced. Now talking about the space or akash. The function of space is to afford room for the existence of all extended substances. So as we have talked earlier, that what is an extended substance? It is astikaya. It exists. It has the extension. So for existence of a body, what we need space. If something exists, it exists somewhere, right? It needs a place to exist because it has a body. It needs some ground where it can be placed, or it can rest, or it can grow. So we need the space. So the function of space is to provide that room for the material, for the extended substances. Now, soul, matter, dharma and adharma all exist in space. So everything that exists, including soul, matter, dharma and adharma, all exist in space. Though space is imperceptible, we cannot perceive this space, its existence is known by an inference. So we cannot perceive space in the similar way we can perceive other material objects. We can see mountains, we can see rivers, we can see a human body, but we cannot see space. We can only infer this space. Now, the how we can infer this space? There are some arguments given. Substances which are extended can have extension only in some place, and that is called akash. We have already talked about this, that extended substances need to stay somewhere, and that place is akash. Though to be extended is the very nature of substances, and no substance which lacks that nature can be made extended or space. So what happens, that those substances which have extension, they have extension by their nature. It is not the quality of space to provide extension. Sorry, yeah, it is not quality of a space to provide extension. What is extended will be extended. Space only provides room for the extended substance to rest. So suppose as if we take the example of a cat. So cat is an extended substance. It has a body, it has extension, so it needs to stay somewhere, it needs to rest somewhere. That somewhere is the space. But suppose if there was no extended body, if the cat did not have any body, we cannot, then space cannot provide the body to that cat. Okay. Yet it is also true that to be extended, a substance requires space as a necessary condition. So space is a necessary condition for extended substances. Without space, they cannot rest anywhere. Now, it should not be thought that extension is explained fully by substances extended without the supposition of some other condition like space. So we cannot say that extension is explained fully by substances extension. We need space to explain the extension. It exists, the extended substance exists, and it exists at some place. Substances are those that occupy or pervade. And what they occupy or where they pervade? They occupy the space, they pervade in space, right? That's how we can explain the substance. Space is that which is occupied or pervaded. Now, space is not same as extension, but it is the locus of extension or the extended things. Space is not same as extension, of course, because say space does not exist in the similar way as a human body exists, right? But for a human body to extend somewhere, it needs space. The Jainas distinguish two kinds of space. First is the Lokakash and the second is the Alokakash. Lokakash is the space containing the world where souls and other substances live, and Alokakash is empty space beyond such world. So Lokakash is this world in which we are living and we are doing our things, vyavharik things, and Alok Akash is empty space beyond such world. You can also understand like Alok Akash is like, just for the example, Alok Akash can be understood as the vacuum uh, above this earth, like when beyond this earth, when you leave the earth and there is only vacuum, that can be understood as Alok Akash, right? Now talking about the time or kal. Time, as Uma Swami states, makes possible the continuity, modification, movement, newness, and oldness of substances. So, how do we know that a substance is continuing, or how do we know that a substance is modified, or how do we know that something is moving, or how do we know that a substance now new will become old? How can we know? How can we know that yes, a person, for example, was born, this is, was, or will, all this is understood only because of the time. If there was no time, we could not understood the continuity of a person, right? Like space time is also inferred though not perceived. Time can also not be perceived. We cannot perceive time, we cannot perceive space. It is inferred as the condition without which substances could not have the characters just mentioned. So for example, uh, there is a mango. It was raw at some point of time, and right now it is a ripe mango. So how can we understand this? We can understand this only with, if we take the condition of time, that in the past uh, time it was a raw mango, right now it has ripened. So it is just because of time that we can talk about the past and present. Now, though it is true that time alone cannot cause a thing to have the characters, but without time a thing cannot endure or continue to exist. Duration implies moments of time in which existence is prolonged. So suppose, for example, a child is born. Suppose a child is born like 20 years ago, and right now the child is 20, is of age of 20, and then after 20 years the child will become 40. So how can we say that the child is of certain age if we are not taking the condition of time, right? We need the condition of time to understand that child's existence, that child's modification, that child's life. Okay, so modification or change of states also cannot be conceived without time. A mango can be green and ripe only successively in different moments of time, right? We have already discussed this example. Now moving forward, without this opposition of time distinctions, we cannot understand how a thing can possess such incompatible characters. So these characters are incompatible. The same thing, the same mango, Once it was green, then it became red. How it is possible that it is changing its appearance, or it is changing its qualities? This is only understood with the help of time distinction. That okay, at certain point of time it was green because it was raw, and then at certain point of time it became orange or red because it has ripened. Now similarly, movement which implies the assumption of successive states by an object can be conceived only with the supposition of time. So movement also needs to be understood with the supposition of time. The successive states also need to be understood with the supposition of time. Right? Now, lastly, the distinction between the old and the new, the earlier and the later, cannot be explained without time. So without time, we cannot say that, hey, something is new or something is old. It can only be understood with the condition of time. Therefore, these are the grounds on which the existence of time can be inferred. As we have already discussed, that time cannot be perceived, it can be inferred. And these were the examples with the help of which we can infer the time. Now, the reason why time is not regarded as an astikaya is that time is one indivisible substance. We have talked about that extended substance are called astikaya. Kaya means body and asti means that it exists. So something has body, and that's why it can be called astikaya. But time does not have a body in the same sense as human being has a body. And time is indivisible substance. We know that when we talk about a body, it can be divided, but when we talk about time, it cannot be divided. Though for our vyavharik purpose, we have divided time into seconds and minutes and hours and days and night, but the time as a whole, the time as a concept cannot be divided. One and the same time is present everywhere in the world. So the same time is present everywhere. Unlike all other substances called astikaya, time is devoid of extension in space. We have already discussed this. Jaina writers sometimes distinguish between the real time, that is paramarthik kala, and empirical or conventional time, that is vyavharik kala, also called samay. So paramarthik kala is the time, as the time that is understood by some supreme being, right? The time that includes Earth's time, that includes Moon's time, Saturn's time, or the time of all the existing planets or the galaxies. That time, that is like the time, the concept is can be understood as Paramarthik Kal, and the Vyavharik Kal can be understood as the Kal or the Samay that uh, we have taken for our conventional sense, like the seconds and minutes and hours, right? Now, continuity or duration, that is Vartana, is the real time, mark of real time, whereas changes of all kinds are the marks of empirical time. So, the continuity is the mark of real time. The Paramarthik time can be um, understood when we understand the continuity of something, that it is continuing, like our galaxy is continuing for so many years, right? And the changes of all kinds, the day, the night, the months like October, November, December, the seasons, all kinds of changes when we are talking about, then this is the mark of empirical time, the vyavharik time. It is this latter samaya, that is vyavharik time or empirical time or conventional time, which is conventionally divided into moments, hours, etc., and is limited by a beginning and an end. So empirical time has a beginning and an end. But real time is formless and eternal. The paramarthik time or the real time, it is formless. It does not have any form and it is eternal. that it is existing. It does not have a beginning and it does not have an end. Of course, something that does not have a beginning will, of course, not have the end as well. By imposing conventional limitations and distinctions on real time, empirical time is produced. So how the empirical time or the vyavharik kal is produced? It is produced when we put some limitations or we put some distinctions on real time, right? And we, of course, we all know that these limitations and distinctions are human made. we have made we have divided the time into seconds and minutes and days and nights. We have divided that for our convention, right? So some Jaina teachers, Kunratna observes, do not admit time as a separate substance but regard it as a mode of other substance. So some of the Jaina teachers, they do not regard time as another substance but as a paryaya or mode. And what is a mode or a paryaya, that we have already discussed in the starting of this Jaina Metaphysics class, that a mode or paryaya is the accidental character of a substance, that is the changing character of a substance. You might remember that we have talked earlier about the definition of a substance, which is gun paryayavad dravyam. Here gun and paryaya are possessed by Dravya. Dravya is the substance, Gun is the essential unchanging character, and Paryaya is accidental changing character, right? Now talking about Dharma and Adharma. So here you cannot say that Dharma and Adharma are Pap and Punya. You cannot say it here, right? Like that is not the papa and punya, is not the concept of dharma and adharma here in Jaina philosophy. Like space and time, these two substances also are inferentially proved to exist. We also prove the existence of dharma and adharma by inference. We cannot perceive dharma and adharma. They do not have a body, they do not exist like a human body. Mobility and immobility, motion and rest are the grounds of such inference. And how do we infer the dharma and adharma? We infer with the help of mobility or immobility, right? And then Jainas are also giving an example, like a fish in the river, though initiated by the fish itself, would not be possible without the medium of water, which is therefore a necessary condition. So what happens, that a fish can only move in the river. So this river or the water is dharma for fish. But can the same fish move on bare land without water? It cannot, right? So the bare earth is adharma for fish, right? So that, so something, if that something is helping in the movement, it is dharma, right? Now similarly, the movement of a soul or a material thing requires some auxiliary condition, without which its motion would not be possible. So movement of a soul requires material things, sorry, requires auxiliary condition. It requires some auxiliary condition or helping condition, without which its motion is not possible, and such condition is the substance called dharma. So all those helping conditions which help in the movement of a soul are dharma for soul. Dharma can only favor or help the motion of moving objects. It cannot make a non-living object move. So what is the uh, work of dharma? Its work is that it helps in motion of moving objects. So if something has the nature of moving, then dharma can help in its movement. But if something does not have the nature of moving, then dharma cannot help, right? Right. Similarly, like water cannot make a fish move. It is the fish's nature that it moves in water. That is the reason water becomes its dharma. Now adharma is the substance that helps the restful state or immobility of objects, just as the shade of a tree helps a traveler to rest, or the earth supporting things that rest on it. Now talking about adharma, it helps the restful state, or it helps the immobility of object. It is also helping according to the nature of the object. As we know that trees cannot move, so trees are resting somewhere. Mountains cannot move, mountains are resting somewhere. So this adharma helps in its restful state. The adharma helps in a tree's restful state. Adharma helps in a mountain's restful state. Okay, it is also helping in a way, right? Now, however, it cannot arrest the movement of any moving object. So if something is moving, then adharma cannot stop it. If fish can move in water, then adharma is not coming there to stop the fish, right? It only helps the resting objects to rest. Dharma and adharma, though thus opposed, are also similar insofar as both are eternal, both are formless, both are non-moving, and both pervade the entire world space, that is Lokakash. So what happens that dharma and adharma both are eternal, right? They do not have a beginning, they do not have an end. They both are formless. You cannot associate a form with it. They are formless. They are non-moving. They are not moving at all. And they pervade the entire world space. That is the Lokakash. That is the space in which all the material bodies and the material objects exist, right? As conditions of motion and rest, both are passive and not active. Both are passive, of course, because as dharma helps in moving object to move, adharma helps the resting objects to rest. They both are passive. They are not doing the uh, contradictory work. Dharma is not stopping the moving object, and adharma is not helping in the movement of a restful object. They both are passive in that sense. Dharma and adharma are used here in this technical sense and not in their ordinary moral sense, as we have already talked about that dharma and adharma are not pap and punya here. Now, regarding all the four substances, that is space, time, dharma and adharma, it should be noted that as causal conditions, they all have a peculiar status. The causal conditions, karnas, may be distinguished into three chief kinds. So as we know that as a causal conditions, there is a cause and then there is some effect. So in that sense, we need three chief kinds. One is agent, as potter is of the pot. Second is instrument, as the potter's wheel. And third is material, as clay is of the pot. Now space, time, etc. come under the category of instrumental conditions, but they should be distinguished from ordinary conditions of that kind, being more indirect and passive than ordinary instrumental conditions. So space and time, they come under instrumental conditions. Instrumental conditions are like this, as the potter's wheel. So they are also instrumental conditions. Space and time are helpful for the agents of all the other things, but they are not like ordinary instrumental conditions. Now Gunratna gives them a special name for space and time. Gunratna says they are apeksha karan. Space and time are apeksha karan. The stone on which the potter's wheel rests may be cited as a condition of this kind in relation to the pot. So in last slide, we have talked about the agent, we have talked about the instrument, and we have talked about the other things. So when we are talking about the apeksha karan, it can be considered as the as the as the stone on which the wheel rests, right? So space and time are similar conditions. Now here is the chart of the substance. as we have discussed in our lectures of Jaina Metaphysics, substance, which is divided into extended, astikaya, and non-extended, that is anastikaya. Then anastikaya has only one thing, that is time. Then extended substances are divided into jiva and ajiva. Then we have in Jeev, Mukt and Badh. In Badh we have Trash and Sthavar. In Trash we have five sensed bodies, we have four sensed bodies, we have three sensed bodies, and we have two sensed bodies. And then at last we have studied the Dharma, Akash and Pudgal. And in last we studied in Pudgal we have atoms and compounds. So that was it for the Jaina Metaphysics lecture. If you have any question, um, you can ask in the comment box. Thank you for uh, watching this lecture. We will meet in the next class.